Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's podcast. My name's Charlotte, and I work as a Year 2 teacher in a primary school in London. If you haven't heard any of Hanaz Writers Podcast before, then have a listen on their podcast channels. They've got one on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, YouTube, and Spotify. You can search for Hanaz Writers Podcast on these websites, and you can start listening to all of the available podcasts on them. In the next few podcasts, I'm going to be talking about 7 different types of creative writing. They are poetry, plays, movies and television scripts, fiction, such as novels, novellas, and short stories, songs, speeches, memoirs, and personal essays. In my previous podcast, I've already talked about how short stories and novels and plays, movies and television scripts, songwriting, and poetry are thought of as creative pieces of writing. I compared each different type of writing to each other and discussed how they were similar and different. In this podcast, I'm going to be talking about another form of creative writing, speeches. And I'm going to look at how they are powerful forms of creative writing. From Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech, I Have a Dream, to Winston Churchill's We Shall Fight on the Beaches speech. Speeches have the ability to move people, shift history, and stir the soul. But what makes them so compelling isn't just the speaker, but also the writing behind the words. Let's dive into how speeches are crafted, why they matter, and how they use the same tools as poetry and storytelling. So what makes a speech creative? Let's start with the big question. What exactly makes a speech a piece of creative writing? When we think of creative writing, we usually think of creative stories, poems, maybe even plays or movie scripts and television scripts. But speeches? They're often seen as a formal or a functional piece of writing. However, the truth is, writing an incredible speech requires just as much imagination, emotion, and artistry as stories, poems, and plays. So think about it. A speech must connect with an audience. They're often live and real time, something that's said then and there. And that means that the language needs to be clear, needs to be engaging with the listeners, and emotionally resonant. And that's not just communication, there's also storytelling in what is there. Let's take John F. Kennedy's famous line, "Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country." And this isn't just policy, it's a rhetoric, a type of way to get people to think. And it's crafted to inspire them, to even challenge them. What can you do for your country? And it sticks in their mind. They're going to remember that sentence out of the whole speech. That is a very important sentence for them. It uses parallel structure and a poetic rhythm. It's got a reversal phrasing as well, the rhetoric, and it makes it unforgettable. And that is creative writing in a nutshell. Shaping words not just to inform people, but to influence people. And that's creative writing as part of a speech as well. Lots of speeches that people give include this type of feature. They have rhetorical questions, and people resonate with it. They think about it. They ask themselves the same question. These questions are things that they're asking themselves all the time. Or maybe they thought about it once. But now that they're hearing it from someone is asking them directly and saying it to them directly, it helps to kind of influence them and support their thinking in that way. So let's look at what techniques and tools that great speechwriters use. Many of them use the same ones that poets and authors rely on as well, of course. And here are the few of the techniques that they use. Number 1 is repetition. Repeating a phrase can drive a message home. It creates a rhythm, builds emotion. Think of Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech with the iconic repetition of "I have a dream" throughout his speech. Here's an excerpt. "I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day, out in the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by their character. I have a dream today. And just take a moment to listen to those words and feel those words. There's a lot there. Even though it's only a few sentences, literally 4 or 5 sentences, what Martin Luther King Jr. is saying is very deep and it's very powerful, impactful even. In this speech that he's given, I have a dream is not just a phrase. It becomes a drumbeat, a rhythm that lifts his message up into something that's unforgettable with its listeners. That speech writers use is metaphor and imagery. Strong speeches use visual imagery and visual language to paint their ideas. Ronald Reagan once described the United States as a shining city on a hill, and it was a metaphor to convey hope and pride and purpose in the listeners and the people who lived there. It's a shining city, of course, on top of a hill. It brings to your imagination a big hill and there's a big town on top and it's shiny and bright and beautiful to look at. So metaphors are very important to help listeners kind of grasp complex ideas, especially in that one moment in time. You don't have a lot to do when you're writing a speech. You can't be there painting the whole picture. You have to be quick, and you have to say something that will help your message stick to the listener as they're listening to you at the moment. We're going to look at the structure. So speeches structure have a beginning, a middle, and end, as usual, just like stories. But they are a lot shorter than the stories. And a good speech starts by grabbing the attention of the person who's starting to give their speech. It needs to be there to grab the attention of the people. It builds towards a core message to the middle of the speech and the emotional high point of that speech. And then it ends with maybe a call to action, something that needs to be done. And the whole speech from the beginning to the middle to the end was there to support them and rouse the people into action to do something. Or it can end with a lasting impression. You can end on a rhetorical question and something that will leave the listener thinking about it for a long time afterwards. Think about Barack Obama's speeches. Now, Obama was known for studying great orators like Abraham Lincoln and Martin Luther King Jr. and JFK. And he also used classical rhetoric, his ethos, pathos, and logos, to organize and deliver his speeches effectively. And his structured approach in his speeches made them persuasive, maybe emotionally resonant to the listeners, and also very easy to follow. So you're very clear where the beginning started, the middle, and then the end. Another thing that speeches have to work with, or the person's giving a speech, is number 4, their voice and tone as they're speaking. Now, every speech has a unique voice, of course. It might be authoritative, vulnerable, might be optimistic, or angry. But that tone must reflect the speaker and what they're thinking and feeling in that moment. Greta Thunberg is a great speaker. When she was addressing the UN and she said, "How dare you?" her words were powerful, not just because of their content, but because of her passion and her urgency and what she said to them during that time at the UN. It channeled her emotion. She'd written her speech in such a way to bring shame upon the UN and to bring them, maybe to wake them up, to shake them, to get them to think about, what are we actually doing right now? So think about these kind of speeches in a way as a way to persuade people. It's a way to get people to be surprised, to think about things in a different way. Speeches help to change the world. They help to shape history as well, not just through what is said, but how it is said by who. Take Winston Churchill, famous PM in the UK, Prime Minister here. And during World War II, when we were facing imminent threat, the whole nation, the whole world was under threat from Germany and their adversaries. And he helped to deliver this legendary line: "We shall fight on the beaches, and we shall fight, and we shall never surrender." And it helped to rouse the army, helped to rouse the soldiers, helped to rouse everybody in the UK. They all listened to his speech, and they all heard him, and they all wanted to take part. They all wanted to take action against this threat, because his speech made them, helped them even to get to that point. His speech was repetitive. He was very defiant, and he was deeply emotional when he was talking to the country. Churchill's words weren't just military strategy. They were there for morale. He was trying to help people to get through this time. It was a very sad time and quite stressful, I can imagine, and quite worrying, I'm sure. So many people worried about their families, worried about their sons and husbands out in the army. And his speech helped them to boost their morale, helped them to think about it in a different way. And he helped to give a bit of poetry as well in this crisis. His speech was there to support the people of the world, support the people of the UK. And it was a very rousing speech. Another speech that was very famous was a speech from Malala Yousafzai, and she was speaking at the United Nations after surviving an assassination attempt. And she said, as part of her speech, she said, "One child, one teacher, one book, and one pen can change the world." A very simple, clear message, very profound as well. Malala then had turned her personal story into a universal message of education and hope. This is someone who had tried to be killed. There was an assassination on her life. Someone had tried to kill her, and she survived it. So she's telling people there's hope. It's not just doom and gloom. And she wanted to get that message across. She wanted to turn her personal story into a universal message of education and hope for everyone. And that's not just speech writing, that's creative brilliance. Even in pop culture, speeches carry a lot of narrative power. Think of Charlie Chaplin's final monologue in The Great Dictator, or movies like Dead Poets Society, The King's Speech, or Hidden Figures. And the power of those speeches and the speech writing is central to their emotional impact on the listeners. And great speeches aren't just performances. They're crafted with intention and artistry and soul. The power of written words spoken aloud. So the next time that you hear a speech, whether it's a political address, a wedding toast, or a TED Talk, listen closely. Behind those powerful words is a writer who shaped every phrase and every pause, every punchline with creative care. And speeches are living, breathing literature. They use the tools of creative writing, the storytelling, there's imagery, metaphor, rhythm, emotion. And they're written to move us, maybe to unite us, sometimes even help to change us. Well, that's all for this podcast. Thank you for listening. If you're someone who loves writing, then I hope that this has inspired you or guided you into thinking about writing maybe your own speech for maybe a character in your novel or your short story. Or if you're writing a television or movie script in the future, then think about how you'll write their speech and what they say. Remember, their words hold value, and also the way that they deliver it. Or maybe you just have to write a speech for a certain event, like a wedding or birthday, and think about how you would write that speech and what you would say and why. If you enjoyed this podcast and you'd like to listen to more, then like and subscribe to Hanaz Writers on their podcast channels. They've got one on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, YouTube, and Spotify. You can also search for Hanaz Writers Podcast on these websites, and you can start listening to all the available podcasts on them. If you're interested in becoming a published author yourself, then why not visit Hanaz Writers' website? You can sign up for free. You can write your own stories, your poems, your speeches, memoirs, music, song lyrics, poems. You can also get help and guidance on them from everyone who works at Hanaz Writers, and you can ask them how it can be published through the website. On that note, thank you for listening, and until next time, bye!